Well, welcome again to the newsletter. Today is day 56 of the legislative session. It's March 11th of 2019, week 9. So to start out, I just wanted to review some of the things that are happening in the legislature this week. There's a lot going on, but just to highlight a couple of things, tomorrow on Tuesday, the Senate Finance Committee is going to be talking about the capital budget. Today in Senate Finance, they reviewed Senate Bill 12. Now, this is a bill that addresses what has come to be known as the Schneider loophole. So this is a sexual assault bill. This is a link in the newsletter. You might be interested in listening to this because the judge who lost his judgeship actually speaks to the committee during this hearing. And I think you'll find what he has to say interesting. He actually made recommendations for other changes, for some of the elements of the bill, some changes in the law that actually prevented him from appropriately sentencing Mr. Schneider. So anyway, I call that to your attention. Very interesting testimony. The Judiciary Committee is continuing to hear crime bills of various types. The State Affairs Committee is still hearing and probably will be moving soon the PFD payback bills. So those are Senate bills 23 and 24, so that's this week. And Senator Coghill has a bill you might be interested in. It would identify who the successor would be to the lieutenant governor. We actually don't have anything in law that says if the governor steps down or leaves office for one reason or another, of course we know the lieutenant governor then steps up. But who replaces the lieutenant governor? We don't have that written down anywhere. Senator Coghill is offering a bill that would identify the attorney general as the person that would succeed the lieutenant governor. I enjoy, thank you for giving me or sending me all of the newsletters, newsletter feedback, the suggestions for how to address the budget. I appreciate it very much. I wanted to address a few of the things that I'm hearing about through your emails. First, there's a lot of concern being expressed about Alaska Psychiatric Hospital, API. Concern about the private company that's been called in to address the citations, the offenses that have been going on at API. They've been going on for some time, and the hospital was actually on the verge of losing its license. So a company called WellPath has been hired by the state under an emergency contract to come in. I wanted to tell you that they have been cited nationally as a company that can come in and correct actions in a psychiatric hospital that are not up to appropriate treatment. So it was found that API was using inappropriate restraints on patients, and also excessive isolation as punishment type devices. In any case, WellPath has come in and is changing the treatment protocols at API to best practices. They have received actually recognition around the country for having done this in other psychiatric hospitals. There's been concern, well, if a private company comes in, does that mean all these state workers lose their job? In fact, WellPath has a custom method of doing business where they invite the present employees to be hired on to their company. And they have found in most cases a vast majority of what were probably previously state employees actually sign on to contracts with them. They are planning to increase the staff at API by 20%. So that's a wonderful thing. And opening up to a full return of 80 beds in that facility. It's been half that for quite a time previous to this. So these are all positive changes at API. We know that people with psychiatric issues, with behavioral health issues, are often placed in jail. incarcerated because there's simply no place to put them for treatment. By increasing the number of beds at API and improving the treatment therapies there, we can change that. I also wanted to let you know the Pioneer Home has been an issue. They are in the budget also for an increase in fees for the Pioneer Home. The state has been subsidizing that, of course. But while there is discussion of increasing the fees at API, there's also an appropriation in the budget of $15 million to help residents now who need that payment assistance. So there are folks there that simply can afford to pay more for our assisted living facilities known as the Pioneer Homes. But there are other folks that would need that payment assistance, and that's being provided for in the budget. So just something to kind of temper perhaps the impression of what's happening. I'm hearing a lot of folks that are deeply concerned about what's known as the WWAMI program. So this is Washington, Wyoming, I'm forgetting who the A is Alaska, of course, how could I forget that? Montana and Idaho. These are 5 states that have partnered together to share physician education programs. Helps reduce the cost for everyone, and those 5 states partnering together. It is proposed in the budget to reduce the funding for the WWAMI program, or physician education. Just letting you know, I'm hearing you. We are looking at that closely, how we might find a middle ground on that. Education, of course, is called out by a vast majority of the emails I'm getting. You're concerned about reducing education. We're looking at that very carefully. You may, at the end of the day, see some reduction, but you're also going to see some changes in policy that actually helps our school districts. There is a bill that's actually offered again that would increase the broadband availability to schools. That bill failed over on the House side last year. The permanent fund dividend. So lots of discussion about that. I'm kind of seeing 50-50 kind of thing. 50% of folks saying, please just reduce the permanent fund dividend that you send me and use that money to fund government services. Other folks are saying, no, I want a full dividend, and by the way, I want full state services too. That's kind of a tricky one. Other folks are saying, look, keep some of the permanent fund dividend and also put in place a state income tax. So I appreciate all of this input. We're taking it all under consideration, and please, I appreciate you sending it in. One of the questions that came up frequently is related to oil taxes, and we talked about that in last week's newsletter, but let me offer some clarifying information because I'm not sure I was very clear last time, and that may have confused some folks. In 2016, cash credits to oil companies was deleted. It was stopped. Now, I want to remind you that those cash credits only went to the small companies. Fury, Kalis, Hillcore got the credits for a short time, but then they became a larger producer, so they lost those cash credits. Bluecrest is another company. These were the smaller companies that got these cash credits. They've been stopped since 2016. Regardless, however, we still have an outstanding debt for those credits that we had promised before. That outstanding debt is somewhere around $800 million. We're paying it off very slowly. Less than about $200 million a year is actually going to pay that past debt. Some of these companies actually counted on those cash credits and leveraged them for advances from banks, loans from banks. Some of them are struggling with potential bankruptcy because the state did not keep their end of the promise. But I wanted you to know, it was only the small companies that got those. The big companies actually have experienced a tax increase, and that happened in 2017. That happened because we changed what costs they could deduct from their taxes. So it amounted to a tax increase. Some of you are hearing that, oh, no, no, credits are still continuing to the big oil companies. There is a credit out there called the sliding scale credit. It's actually not a credit. It's a deduction on taxes. It is the deduction that was put in to make our oil taxes progressive. So that means as the price of oil goes up, the deduction itself goes down so that they owe higher taxes. At low oil prices, the sliding scale credit is higher so that they are not so penalized when, in fact, they're not making much money. And in fact, for a period of time in the last few years, they were actually not making any money. Remember that under our tax regime, even when the companies are losing money, they're not losing money now. Yes, I know that. But when they were, Alaska always gets money from oil. They get money in the form of royalties, property tax, corporate income tax, all of those things, tariff through the pipeline. So Alaska never loses regardless of what the price of oil is. But that sliding scale credit is actually an integral part of our tax policy, which makes the oil companies pay more as the price of oil goes up. So I wanted to clarify that. Lastly, to let you know, the governor's proposed a budget. Yes, I know it's caused a lot of alarm. We are working with the governor to find a middle ground, and no governor's budget that's been proposed has ever gotten through the legislature as it was proposed. And this one won't either. This will be changed. It will be changed dramatically, I predict. But please continue to give me your feedback. Crime bills, the permanent fund dividend, the budget. I'm interested in hearing from you. Thanks so much for watching. I also want to highlight in the newsletter, you'll see that Representative Pruitt and I will be having an open house meeting with folks on March 23rd. So take a look in the newsletter. You'll see that announcement. We're going to have APD there as well as the Fish and Game Department and some other folks, because there's a lot of other issues that I know citizens and the communities are interested in. Thanks very much for watching. We'll see you again next week.